Hello, this is Lisa, CEO of Site for Wight, welcoming you to this week's Talking News on Saturday, the 7th of May, 2022. This week we've spent a lot of time forward planning. We want to make sure that dates are in people's diaries. So the first one I can announce is September the 10th. We will be holding the Site for Wight Open Day. This day proved very popular last September, where we had 12 exhibitors come in to show all of the software, hardware, gadgets and information that they can offer to people, and over 120 people attended. So we have decided that unfortunately Millbrook House is a little too small to hold the event this year, so it will be held in central Newport with easy access to the bus station. Other dates for the diary is the 26th of May is the Site for Wight Jubilee Party at Wendis Hall in Newport. Also, Riverfest on the 14th of May, which we will also be attending, and various other shows and activities planned for the coming summer season. My apologies for not being with you last week, but I was enjoying the monthly stride with some members, including their guide dogs, where we walked for approximately 5 miles around the back of Carisbrooke. I took my dog Nala along with me, and she enjoyed playing with the other dogs, although she couldn't quite keep up with a couple of them. The stride ended with a meal at the 8 Bells, which was enjoyed by everybody. If you do want to join the Striders group, we meet on the last Friday of the month with a usual walk of between 3 and 7 miles. If this seems a little long to you, we also have the Millbrook Milers, which is between 1 and 3 miles. The next one will be held in the middle of May, and Susan will be giving details in her report on where and when. Very much hope everybody is staying safe and enjoying the sunshine. Lisa, CEO, Site for Wight.
This is Chris, reading an article from the Island Echo. Operation Marigold. Murder suspect bailed following killing of David Johns in Shanklin. A 36-year-old man arrested on suspicion of murdering Shanklin man David Johns has been bailed by police. Hampshire Constabulary has confirmed that the unnamed man, who was himself injured during the altercation at an address at St John's Road, Shanklin, has been released from custody. The investigation remains ongoing, but the 36-year-old prime suspect has, for now, been bailed with conditions. He must answer bail on the 23rd of May. It's known that the male was arrested on suspicion of murder on the night of Monday, the 25th of April. He was rushed to St Mary's Hospital, what is understood to be knife wounds to his stomach, and earlier this week was released from hospital and into custody for questioning. As previously reported by Island Echo, grandfather David Johns was found dead after armed police and medics descended on a property near the junction with Orchardley Road. His family paid tribute to the Brentford football fan. Police say they will provide further updates on their investigation when they are in a position to do so. 2 women, previously arrested on suspicion of murder, have been released with no further action to be taken against them. Anyone with concerns or information can contact the police on 101, quoting Operation Marigold, or 4422016295.
This is Brian reading an article from On the Wight. Isle of Wight Council's on-street electric vehicle charging point plans are way behind schedule. First, the council said the on-street EV chargers would go live in November 2021. Next, they said the new year. Now, several months later, they're still not live. Here are the results of News on the Wight's prolonged digging. It was the end of October 2021 that News on the Wight first asked Isle of Wight Council, IWC, when the 10 new on-street electrical vehicle charging points, EVCP, would go live. Drivers of EVs had been getting in touch with News on the Wight for some time, frustrated by the lack of high-speed EVCPs on the island. This included owners of holiday lets receiving annoyed feedback from visitors. The council had originally received £67,500 from the government before November 2020 to start to bring EV charging up to a serviceable level on the island. After asking when the new EVCPs would go live, an Isle of Wight spokesperson told us, "We aim to have the charge points working by the end of November 2021. The end of November came and went, and the frustration of EV users grew as the on-street charging points were still not live. News on the Wight attempted to get answers from the council again, twice in December, and was told, "It is taking longer than anticipated to get everything sorted out, so it will be sometime in the new year before they're working." The new year came and went, and still no sign of the EV charging points going live, so News on the Wight asked again. This time there was zero response. 3 months later, having seen that the EV charging points were still not live, we chased again. Only recently did we get a reply from the Isle of Wight Council. Their position now is that they hope to have them operational during June 2022, some 7 months since the original date. No reason was given for the delay. Meanwhile, residents who use EVs and don't have the luxury of somewhere off-road to charge their cars, and visitors to the island who drive EVs and need to charge when they're here, tell News on the Wight they're becoming increasingly frustrated at the lack of high-speed charging points. Over in Portsmouth in 2019, the City Council was in line for a national award for their innovative electric car charging points. Their approach was to provide residential electrical vehicle charge points using existing lampposts as well as new bollards. News on the Wight asked the Isle of Wight Council in November 2020 what action the Isle of Wight Council had taken to implement EV charging in street lampposts. They replied, "We have investigated various options but have no plans at present to install lamppost charging points." The council said there would be 10 on-street charging points and 27 charging sockets in council car parks.
Funding boost for specialist RNIB support service on the Isle of Wight from Island Echo. Funding boost for specialist support for people diagnosed with sight loss in Isle of Wight and Portsmouth. A Royal National Institute of Blind People, RNIB, service which provides emotional and practical support to people newly diagnosed with sight loss, has received a funding boost from Simply Health. The funding will support the extension of 2 RNIB Eye Care Liaison Officer (ECLO) posts in Portsmouth and on the Isle of Wight. This funding means that the Isle of Wight ECLO service, which is based in St Mary's Hospital in Newport and supports over 22,000 patients, has been extended from part-time to full-time, while the Portsmouth service in Queen Alexandra Hospital, which supports 47,000 patients, can continue on a 5-day basis. An ECLO offers support and advice in areas including independent living, returning to work, benefit entitlements, use of technology, emotional support, and coping at home. ECLOs also give patients and their families the opportunity to talk about the impact of a sight loss diagnosis on their lives, and to help those patients make informed choices about how to maximise their independence when living with sight loss. Laura Gouljar RNIB ECLO at St Mary's Hospital, has said, "I understand that if someone is told their sight is deteriorating, it's life-changing news. This applies to those with long-standing sight loss or newly diagnosed. My role is about reassuring the patient that they're not alone and helping them get the right support and information in a timely manner to enable them to remain independent. I am looking forward to providing a greater level of support and advice, helping more people than before." Dr. Sneh Kamker, Chief Executive Officer at Simply Health, adds, "We are driven by our long-standing purpose to improve access to healthcare for all in the UK. We are proud to fund this extension to RNIB's ECLO service, which will help to reduce waiting times for patients, enable many more people dealing with sight loss to access the help and support they need." To find out more information about ECLOs, visit RNIB's website at www.rnib.org.uk/ECLO.
Isle of Wight doctor suspended after sexual assault charges from the Isle of Wight radio, read by Lee. A doctor at St Mary's Hospital has been suspended after allegations of sexual assault emerged. Dr. Chimido Ikpo of Redwood Close, Newport, denied two counts of sexual assault at Isle of Wight Crown Court on Wednesday. He stood accused of inappropriately touching one woman on August 2nd, 2020, and another woman on August 8th, 2020. After a not guilty plea, the case was adjourned for trial on February the 20th, 2023. A spokesman for the Isle of Wight NHS Trust said, Dr. Ikpu's General Medical Council, GMC registration, has been suspended and therefore he is not able to work as a doctor. Dr. Ikpu has been granted unconditional bail until the trial date.
This is Chris, reading an article from the Island Echo. Continued anger over lack of pharmacists as island chemists close at short notice. Staff at chemists across the Isle of Wight are facing growing abuse from frustrated patients due to the shortage of pharmacists, something that has been hindering the island for months. Some people have been going without essential medication for diabetes, epilepsy and other conditions. A local health watchdog has warned, simply because their local pharmacy is closed for the day at short notice. An incident in Ventnor on Thursday saw the Boots Pharmacy on the High Street lock its doors with patients still inside due to the abuse the staff were receiving. Issues were highlighted at a meeting of the Isle of Wight associations of local councils last week, which heard how islanders were waiting in hour-long queues to receive their prescription, and people were making special trips only to find the chemists shut. The meeting also heard of an inequality of provision across the island and worries that it could have a knock-on effect on other medical services. Problems, however, had not been noted at small independent pharmacies. John Graney of Brading said a licence for a pharmacist in the town had been refused, and travel to Ryde to collect a prescription for a parent and 2 children would be £15. Joanna Smith, Health Watch Isle of Wight manager, said many people had contacted them with negative feedback. Speaking after the meeting, Miss Smith said, "While we understand there is a shortage of pharmacists, It is unacceptable people have not been able to take prescribed medication which will impact their health and well-being. The body has already contacted the island's clinical commissioning group to see if GPs can issue prescriptions covering longer timeframes, for example, 6 months instead of 1 or 3. It has also shared its concerns with local pharmaceutical committee and will be contacting NHS England and Improvement, who commission local pharmacies to escalate them and discover what action will be taken to ensure people can get the medication they need on the island. Healthwatch is asking that anyone who would like to share their feedback on island pharmacies at the moment, good or bad, get in touch. You can email inquiries at healthwatchisleofwight.co.uk, call 01983 608 608, or find out more online at www.healthwatchisleofwight.co.uk.
This is Brian reading an article from the Island Echo. Mental health hub plans progress with former HMV store set to be transformed. The launch of a mental health hub for islanders in the centre of Newport has taken a step closer. The Isle of Wight NHS Trust recently took over the former HMV and Poundland store as a place to make some of its mental health services more accessible and allow people to find out more. The Integrated Mental Health Care Hub will offer a range of support from Newport High Street as demand grows for services after the COVID pandemic. The Trust has recently seen increasing pressures on its mental health services, with a pattern now emerging of people presenting later in their illness when they are more acutely unwell. The hub plan was unveiled over a year ago, following concerns about how to get islanders talking about their mental health. It is hoped the more centralised public location will destigmatise mental health by providing a service outside of St Mary's Hospital or other healthcare settings. Planning documents unveiling the empty building's transformation say it is intended to be a safe space for people who are having an immediate mental health crisis. To help that, a new discreet entrance will be created at the rear of the building directly into some therapy spaces. The Care Hub will also provide primary care support, specialist services and spaces for local communities, as well as consultation and clinics. As part of the transformation plans submitted to the Isle of Wight Council, a lift would be added to make all 3 floors accessible. New windows and doors will be installed, as well as a rooftop plant room enclosure. Planners say as the building would accommodate visiting mental health patients, it is important the windows provided as much natural light as possible to provide an open and calm atmosphere. You can view the plans, reference 22/00738/FUL, on the Council's planning register. Comments can be submitted until the 27th of May.
Isle of Wight taxi fares rise on the cards in response to rising fuel and running costs from the Wight. Taxi price rises are back on the agenda and will be voted upon at next week's Cabinet meeting. Taxi drivers and proprietors have made a request to the Isle of Wight Council asking it to approve a proposed increase in tariffs, the first major overhaul of fares since 2014. The fares set would be the maximum amount drivers could charge, so some companies could charge less. Cabinet meetings will meet next Thursday, the 12th of May, to consider the request. Taxi drivers and proprietors asked for an increase in tariffs during a council consultation with the trade last November. Most charges have not risen in 8 years. The highest increases suggested by the trade would mean a 2-mile journey, tariff 1, 8 a.m. to 10 p.m, would rise by £1.10 a 5-mile journey, by £2.30 a 10-mile journey, by £4.30. The last review of Ireland taxi fares was back in May 2019, pre-pandemic, and only made changes to one set of tariffs. At Licensing Committee on 28 February, officers highlighted that any rise must ensure that the fares are proportionate and affordable, but still ensuring that taxi operators have a viable business so that this important service can be delivered. The council did not receive any funding from the proposed increase.
Game of Thrones and Harry Potter stars coming to Cowes for Fan TC Con from Isle of Wight Radio, read by Lee. A Game of Thrones actor and a Harry Potter star are among the famous faces coming to Cowes in November. Fan TC Con is taking place at Cowes Yacht Haven in association with the Wessex Cancer Trust. Among those appearing is Clive Mantle, a much-loved British actor, best known for playing Little John in Robin of Sherwood, Great John Umber in Game of Thrones, Simon Horton in The Vicar of Dibley, and Mike Barrett in Casualty. Clive was last seen as Dunk with Sheridan Smith and Mark Addy in a new film version of Joe Brand's novel The More You Ignore Me. Clive also did rather well on ITV's Celebrity Beat the Chasers recently. Others famous faces appearing are Carla Mendonça, best known for playing the mother alien Sophie Johnson in ITV and CITV's award-winning series My Parents Are Aliens. Carla has been an actress for 35 years, working in film, television, stage and radio. Most recently, she played Orla Crawshaw in Coronation Street. Touchwood actor Kai Owen will also be attending the event alongside Craig Fairbrass, who has appeared in films for Queen and Country, Cliffhanger alongside Sylvester Stallone, John Lithgow and Michael Rooker, and the lead actor Pat Tate in the Rise of the Foot Soldier film series. He also appeared as Dan Sullivan in the BBC soap opera EastEnders. Joseph Nilsson is a British actor known as Maria's dad in Series 1 of the Sarah Jane Adventures, Althric in The Last Kingdom, Luke Hemingway in Holby City, Carter in Casino Royale, Dr. Sam Morgan in Peak Practice and Dragonheart, Vengeance as Darius. He recently appeared in the Marvel series Moon Knight. Harry Potter actress Hebe Beardsall will also appear. She made her debut as Ariana Dumbledore in Harry Potter and Deathly Hallows Part 2. Her image also appeared prominently in Fantastic Beasts, The Secrets of Dumbledore as well. Since then, she has appeared in shows like Vera, Casualty, and the forthcoming Netflix series The Witcher, Blood Origin as Katrin. A number of traders, cosplay competition, VR gaming, 3D printing, board gaming, retro gaming plus will be announced over the next few months. Tickets are now on sale at fantasycon.net. The event takes place on November the 5th.
This is Chris reading an article from Isle of Wight Radio. Royal recognition for Isle of Wight's Borthwood Copse. The Isle of Wight's Borthwood Copse has been given royal recognition ahead of the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. The forest has been chosen as part of a nationwide network of 70 ancient woodlands to be dedicated to Her Majesty. The Queen's Green Canopy recently announced the network of 70 ancient woodlands and 70 ancient trees across the United Kingdom, which will form part of the ancient canopy to celebrate Her Majesty's 70 years of service. The initiative was launched by His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales, who is patron of the Queen's Green Canopy. Under one of the ancient tree dedications, the Old Sycamore, located at Dumfries House in Scotland. Robin Lang, National Trust Countryside Manager, Isle of Wight, said, "Borthwood is an exceptional woodland and a wonderful place to spend time in. It is much loved by local people as a place to walk, horse ride and cycle. It's a relatively small wood, but parts of it are quite dramatic, with ancient gnarled oaks and majestic beech. It's full of wildlife too, never more so than in spring when it's carpeted in native bluebells. There are beautiful sunny glades where you might catch a glimpse of a red squirrel, a dragonfly, or hear a wood cricket. For centuries, North Borthwood Copse has been a working wood, providing timber for house and boat building. Today, the National Trust continues that management by coppicing hazel and the introduced sweet chestnut. The main benefit of this is that it keeps the wood dynamic, letting light and warmth in to allow flowers to grow, insects to flourish, and fresh coppice to growth to provide breeding birds and small mammals such as dormice and rare bat species with habitats and food sources. The spin-off is that we can supply some of our hedge laying and fencing materials for conservation work on other places on the Isle of Wight without transporting these products great distances. Borthwood Copse lies to the east of the island and was once part of a much larger medieval hunting forest. It appears among the lands of William, son of Azor, in the Domesday Book and is associated with Queen Isabella de Fortibus, governor and self-proclaimed queen of the island in the 13th century. Later, Borthwood is mentioned in the diaries of Sir John Oglander, a 17th century English politician who became Deputy General of the Isle of Wight in 1624. John Deacon, head of woodlands at the National Trust, said, "We are delighted to have 5 woodlands and 8 of our notable trees included in this prestigious list and dedicated to the Queen's remarkable 70-year reign. Trees mean so much to so many people, and these dedications present a wonderful opportunity to share the brilliant stories of some of the UK's most significant trees and woodlands which have themselves witnessed remarkable periods in history and have their own stories to tell. These include trees like Newton's apple tree at Woolsthorpe Manor, where the scientist first questioned and then came up with the theory of gravity after an apple fell to the ground beside him, and the oldest tree in our care, the 2,500-year-old Anchor Wyke yew at Runnymede in Surrey, close to the site of the sealing of the Magna Carta. By sharing the stories behind the ancient woodlands and trees, the Queen's Green Canopy aims to raise awareness of the habitats and the importance of conserving them for future generations.
This is Brian reading an article from the Island Echo. Temporary footbridge at Brading train station looks set to remain for another year. A temporary footbridge at Brading train station could remain in situ for another 12 months as Network Rail applies for permission to extend its presence beyond what is already permitted. The Isle of Wight Council granted permission for the structure to be put in place back in March of last year, with the condition that it would be removed within 12 months of erection. However, Network Rail says the temporary bridge is required to stay at its location for another 12 months. The poor condition of the Grade 2 listed permanent bridge at Brading meant that the temporary bridge had to be installed to enable repair works. The permanent structure has been strengthened to modern standard as part of the £26 million upgrade of Island Line. It was originally envisaged that the temporary bridge would be required for approximately 6 months, so the scheme has already taken twice as long as first planned. Permission is now being sought to enable the temporary structure to remain until the 15th of May 2023, 24 months after it was first put in place. Update Wednesday. Network Rail has confirmed that the discovery of bad footings has led to the project's delay. A spokesperson for Network Rail has told Island Echo, "We have applied to extend the length of time the temporary footbridge is up at Brading after our ground investigation surveys came back with bad news about the state of the footings we would be putting the new bridge on." When the station was built in the 1860s, it was constructed to the standards of the time. The platforms were basic walls with the middle sections filled in with whatever material was to hand, often spoil from other worksite or even locomotive ash. While those standards were fine for the time and supported the old footbridge, they're not good enough for the type of bridges we build today. As a result, we need to change the design of the proposed footbridge and create a design for a pad foundation to support it. The reason for seeking planning permission for the temporary bridge is that the Brading station is a listed building, and if we make any changes to designs or even how long structures are in place, we need to seek permission. Once we've got new designs, we'll have a good idea of timescales, and we can let everyone know when the new bridge will be ready.
Large group escorted off Isle of Wight after police issue dispersal order in Cowes. From Isle of Wight Radio. A large group of men had to be escorted off the Isle of Wight after causing a nuisance in Cowes on Bank Holiday Monday. Hampshire Constabulary says it issued a 2-hour Section 35 dispersal order in the town to prevent further antisocial behaviour. Police were called to a group of men causing a nuisance to other customers in the Duke of York pub. They were asked to leave by staff. Earlier in the day, a speaker was also stolen from Town Quay. Officers say it was later found and will be returned to its owner. The incident prompted a large police response to Cowes. At least a dozen officers were alerted to the area at around 2:51 p.m. A spokesman for the force said, "The group was later located close to the Red Funnel terminal and the men were escorted onto the ferry to return to the mainland." As a result of the initial call being received, a 12-hour Section 35 dispersal order was introduced for the immediate area in Cowes to prevent further antisocial behaviour.
New polling data shows more than half of the UK know little or nothing about the work of local councillors. From On the Wight, read by Lee. The Isle of Wight won't be holding local elections this week, unlike much of the UK, but this research provides an interesting insight into the views of the general public about the work of local councillors. The Local Government Information Unit, LGIU, has published exclusive polling data from Ipsos on UK attitudes to local elections, the work of councillors and the role of local government. According to the new polling, local government and local councillors were felt to have the most impact on people's daily lives and the quality of life in our communities. However, a good majority of respondents lacked knowledge and awareness about how councils work and what councillors actually do. More than half of UK adults, 53%, said they know little or nothing about the work of their local councillors and how decisions are taken in their local council, 54%. Similarly, when it comes to confidence in explaining to others what local councillors do or how decisions are made by their local council, more than half of the UK adults say they are not confident in doing so, 53 and 56% respectively. As far as voting in local elections, 7 in 10 adults in the UK feel they are well informed about its important to do so, and 83% of those who often or always vote in local elections feel they are well informed about why it's important. However, a clear disconnect plays out on polling day when turnout in local elections is only around 3 in 10 adults. About a third of UK adults, 32%, said the local councillors in their area do a bad job at telling people about the work they do in their local area. However, more than a third, 36%, think local councillors in their area do a good job at providing information on issues or services in their local area and making decisions in the best interests of their local community. When it comes to decision making in local areas, about a third, 35%, said they would like to know more about the process, but don't want to be involved beyond that. On the other side, more than 1 in 4, 28%, said they would like to have more of a say in how decisions are taken in their area. The polling date was previewed at LGIU's State of the Locals Election Experts panel in April, with speakers Kieran Pedley, who's the Research Director for Ipsos UK, Peter Stanyon, the Chief Executive, Association of Electoral Administrators, Alan Folds, Ballot Box Scotland, Jonathan Carr-West, Chief Executive of the LGIU, and Ingrid Kohler, Head of Content, LGIU. You can watch the discussion again here. Jonathan Carr-West, Chief Executive, LGIU, said, "More work needs to be done to tell the story of local government. It is our councillors and council officers who are on the ground day in and day out, battling for residents and our communities. However, the majority of UK adults have very little understanding of what they actually do. These institutions are a bedrock of our society and something we should not take for granted. As we head into these local elections, it is essential that the British public understands the power of their vote and the impact that local government has on their communities. It is councils who, after more than a decade of funding cuts, are continuing to care for the elderly, safeguard vulnerable children, invest in housing, and drive local growth. It is councils who, throughout the pandemic, supported their most vulnerable residents and made public health work where central government interventions failed. Their work goes far beyond bins and parking, and their story must be heard." Ipsos Research Director Kieran Pedley said of the research, "These findings show that the public clearly recognise the importance of local government and voting in local elections, but at the same time, large numbers do not feel well informed about how decision-making works at the local level. Given that most do not seek active involvement in local government and decision-making, building understanding in this area will likely be a challenge, although public appetite for more information does exist. Ipsos UK interviewed a representative quota sample of 2,076 adults aged 18 to 75 in the United Kingdom. Interviews took place on the online omnibus using the Ipsos digital platform between the 8th and 11th of April this year. The data has been weighted to the known offline population proportions for age, working status and social grade within gender, and for government, office, region and education to reflect the adult population of the UK.
Hello everyone, this is the second part of the Talking News read by Howard
and Madeline.
Before we actually get on to the Talking News, we have some society news for us. Swimming will be on this Monday, the 9th of May. The group are looking for more members to join them at Medina Leisure Centre every Monday between 1:30 and 2:30 p.m. The group has full use of the pool and the cost is only £5. Coffee and chat is on every Wednesday at Millbrook House, 10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. Only £1 for cake and coffee. Please come along for a chat, and members of staff will be there for any assistance with equipment and information. The book group will once again meet at Millbrook House on Wednesday at 2 p.m. to discuss their latest book. If you'd like to join this small sociable group and enjoy listening to books, please do not hesitate to call the office. Our Mix and Mingle group is on a Thursday at Millbrook House between 10:30 and 2 p.m. and the group enjoys a variety of activities.
Our new group, the Millbrook Milers, is on Friday the 13th of May. The group will meet at Quor Abbey for coffee and cake before enjoying a stroll to the old abbey around 1 mile circular walk. If you are interested in this new social group, please call the office for more details. The charity will be at the Newport River Fest next Saturday, held on the Newport Quay between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. Please pop along and say hello to our wonderful volunteers running the stall for the day. Unfortunately, the horse riding planned for Monday has been cancelled due to the stables cancelling our booking. Alternative venue is being investigated and more details will follow once confirmed. Our plans for the Jubilee Party on the 26th of May are well underway. We still have spaces left. It is at the first Newport Scout Hall in Newport between 2 p.m. and 4:30 p.m. If you would like to join us for the afternoon tea and entertainment, please call the office and book a space. The afternoon is free and open to members, carers and volunteers. If any of the activities mentioned appeal to you, please do not hesitate to call the office for a chat. We would love to hear from you and encourage all members to come along to these wonderful social groups.
Okay, now we move on to the items from the Observer and County Press. This article is called "I'm Very Worked Up." After a bank holiday weekend, though many of you will have been working as normal, I thought it only right that the subject of this week's column should get everyone's blood pressure up. So I decided to write about ferries. The fixed link also gets people worked up, but is a different issue. The government should fund the feasibility study to give a definitive answer one way or another. A few months ago, I asked people to come forward with issues they were experiencing with the ferries. As you can imagine, my list was long, so I thought I'd try my luck and ask the CEOs of Wight Link and Red Funnel for a meeting. They both agreed, and I'm very grateful for their time and the answers they gave to your concerns. They're both decent people, but they are employed to make money out of ferry travel, so that's what they do. My views on the ferry companies are well known. Nationalisation, or as near as possible, would be my preferred route. An idea Mr. Bob Seeley has cottoned on to as he's starting asking for something similar. although he also supports the idea of state-sponsored food banks, so I'm not sure he really knows what he wants. Nationalisation is only likely to happen with a change of government. In the absence of that, the most sensible thing to do is open dialogue to address users' issues. As a business owner, I sympathise with staffing issues caused by COVID, the difficulty in recruiting new staff, and the spiralling cost of fuel. Indeed, their existing staff are working hard to continue to provide a service and usually do so in a professional and courteous manner, despite the pressures that they're under. After that, my sympathy runs out, as most businesses don't benefit from such a captive market. I appreciate the infrastructure is to provide travel from our marvellous island to the big island is expensive, but whilst they're run privately, a significant element of the ticket will always be servicing debt, profits and dividends. Both ferry operators say passenger numbers are only 40% of pre-pandemic figures. But how many of us have avoided travel due to a lack of service? The argument that shares in Red Funnel and Wight Link are held by pension funds, so expensive fares benefit pensioners, is weak, and just further exposes the unfair nature of our financial system. Not providing a decent state pension shouldn't give carte blanche to private companies. We've seen what that approach has done to the housing market. So what can we do? Red Funnel are reintroducing the users forum, so attend or send your issues along with someone that is, or email them whitelinkco.uk/send us a message. As private companies, it's their business to solve the problems we all encounter. It helps them as much as us. I'm happy to keep in regular contact with them to make sure action is taken. That should mean that the two big problems that are left are price and the frequency of crossings, problems that affect us all. They're also problems that have an answer. Just look at how the ferries are run for the Scottish Islands. We just need a government that is willing to offer the solution.
Royal Victoria Yacht Club fundraiser for the Ukraine. The Royal Victoria Yacht Club in Fishbourne held a fundraising event for Ukraine last month. Dan Williams, wife Tanya and baby Sophia had to leave their home and journey across Ukraine from Kyiv and across the border into Poland when the conflict in Ukraine started. Since returning to the island, Dan has made trips back to Eastern Europe with aid relief. Vice Commodore Helen Verber said, "One of our members contacted Dan for advice on how best to fundraise, what to raise money for, and how to ensure it got to the right people in the right place at the right time. We were hugely grateful for all the prizes and items donated, both for the auction and a raffle, particularly Mermaid Gin, Wight Link, Harold George and Harwood's Garage. Such generosity was quite humbling. The situation in Ukraine has certainly touched people's hearts in a way that hasn't been felt for a long time." A Ukraine-themed meal was followed by an auction, presided over by RVYC member Howard Knowles. After the auction was the raffle draw. The total amount raised was over £3,000, more than the club predicted. This has now risen to over £4,000 from members' donations and the proceeds from the club's Easter duck race. Dan and Tanya said a few words at the end of the evening, explaining how touched they were with the amount raised. Dan said he had spoken to the Minister of Health in Ukraine, who advised ambulances were desperately needed. Dan felt the money should go towards a specific item, and it was unanimously agreed that the monies raised should be pooled with another charity which Daniel works closely with, Soma UK. A used ambulance will be purchased and filled with medical supplies to be used at a children's hospital in Kyiv.
This article is by Kay Marriott, who is the High Sheriff for the Isle of Wight. I feel extremely humbled and privileged to have been chosen to be the island's High Sheriff for the forthcoming year, particularly as I'm island-born. I was educated at Cowes High School and live in Cowes with my husband Brian. After spending 44 years working in the NHS, I plan to retire in March 2020. However, as we all know, COVID changed everybody's plans that year, and I became involved in numerous COVID-related projects, including the St Mary's Hospital vaccination hub. Like all islanders, I feel passionate about the island, and during my year in office, I aim to raise awareness about this important ceremonial position and the part it plays in crime prevention. Many people are not aware that the High Sheriff is a voluntary role, and those appointed meet all the costs of their office each year without any expense falling on the public purse. The key responsibilities of the post are to uphold and enhance the ancient office of High Sheriff and make a meaningful contribution on the Isle of Wight, to actively support the constitution in the county, including the royal family, the judiciary, the police and other law enforcement agencies, the emergency services, local authorities, the church and faith groups. To assist and support visiting High Court judges to the county, offering hospitality and attending to them at court. To support the Lord Lieutenant during royal visits and on other appropriate ceremonious occasions. To act as returning officer for parliamentary elections. As you can imagine, I am very proud to have joined the ranks of the 55 High Sheriffs across the counties of England and Wales. During the coming year, I will be doing all I can to raise the profile of organisations which support my theme within the community. The theme I've chosen is Inspire to Aspire. Having volunteered as a magistrate over the last 3 years, I am aware that some offenders enter the judicial system at a young age. Organisations that support young people to aspire to make better lifestyle choices are so important. Inspire to Aspire will aim to highlight the work of people and organisations who dedicate their time to supporting young people at risk and to inspire others to play a part. We can all be positive role models, give our time volunteering or acknowledging others, making a difference to the island community in some way and making it a better place to live and enjoy. I'll also be promoting the High Sheriff's Trust, a fund which has supported over 200 island charities, groups and individuals on the island. Donations to the trust are distributed to worthy causes who make a difference to the island community in some way, making it a better place to live and enjoy. It's important to acknowledge public servants, volunteers or community groups based on the island, which I'll do through offering the High Sheriff Awards. They place particular emphasis on those who promote crime prevention and enhance safety in our community. Nominations for worthy recipients can be made via our website on how to donate to the Trust. My other interests include spending time with family and friends, keeping fit and reading. I'm a member of the Isle of Wight Cantata Choir and a volunteer for Northwood House. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to fit everything in over the forthcoming year, but I plan to give it my all. I'm told the role of High Sheriff always involves meeting lots of islanders. If you see me out and about, look for the feathered hat, please do come and say hello.
And now for a trip down memory lane. Elderly islanders have taken a trip down memory lane during a reminiscence festival jointly funded by Sovereign and Arts Council England. More than 40 residents attended a series of events held last month with a reminiscence specialist, Lisa Curley, from Inspired. She said, "I love being able to offer these sessions because I can see how much the participants gain from the experience. It feels good to know that these objects can be used again to help people to recollect and spark memories. This reminiscence work helps people to come together and socialise and get to know each other better. Participants were able to enjoy sharing and listening to each other's memories. I also learn so much when I do these sessions. I'm so lucky to be able to work with older people. They are like history books, only much more interesting. As well as taking a trip down memory lane, reminiscing over objects from the past, on loan from Carisbrooke Castle Museum, the residents were treated to live music organised by Independent Arts. Nicola Ward, Workshops for Wellbeing Manager, said, "It's been a real pleasure for independent arts music practitioners to get involved in this festival. We've had a wonderfully warm welcome. Participants have been real stars getting involved and singing along to fabulous favourite tunes from the past. Thanks to all for the smiles and the laughs, and hope to see everyone again soon."
A very short item now. The main road at Blackwater was closed yesterday morning, that's Thursday, after a car rolled onto its roof after colliding with another vehicle. One person was conveyed to St Mary's via ambulance.
Now, be careful what you bin. This is what can happen when people fail to extinguish a barbecue before putting it in the bin. A refuse lorry had to be emptied onto the road over the Easter bank holiday weekend after a barbecue started a fire. As we head into summer and we use our gardens more, the Isle of Wight Council is reminding residents and visitors about the dangers of putting hot disposable barbecues and used coals in with their rubbish. Binning hot barbecues puts refuse workers and the general public at risk, while putting more pressure on emergency services. Amy, the council's waste contractor, has seen a number of dangerous incidents involving fires in collection vehicles and at its recycling centre on Forest Road. The sources of these fires are discarded uncooled barbecues, batteries and aerosols. Natasha Dix, the council's strategic manager for waste and environment, said, "It's essential that people ensure barbecues are extinguished before disposing of these to prevent fire. These fires can often have enormous consequences, damaging collection vehicles and risking the lives of our refuse workers. To avoid accidental fires, drench ashes with water or let them cool completely for at least 48 hours. Never put hot ash or part-burned materials from domestic or garden fires or barbecues, or put used portable barbecues in the bin before they are completely cooled."
The owners of the derelict Ocean Hotel in Sandown have appealed a Section 215 notice ordering them to clean up the site and make it safe, meaning there'll be further delays while the court deals with the application. Isle of Wight Council planners have been trying to get work done since 2019, but faced difficulties when the ownership of the hotel changed a number of times between investment companies, frustrating efforts to find a negotiated solution. The Section 215 notice served in March listed 15 improvements and repairs needed to make the former hotel and its grounds tidy, safe and secure, including removal of all buildings materials, rubbish and overgrown vegetation from the visible parts of the site, repairing the boundary fences adjacent to the high street and overlooking the seafront, and remove the collapsed entrance canopy overlooking the esplanade. The landowners were given 2 months to carry out most of the work, with a further 2 months to clean and repaint the front of the building. However, last Tuesday, that's April 26th, the council received notice that the current owners was appealing the Section 215 notice, claiming that the condition of the site does not adversely affect the surrounding areas. They also suggest the state of the site is due to ongoing development or renovation, that the work ordered exceeds what is needed, and they've not been given a reasonable time to complete it. The appeal has the effect of pausing the clock on the work required until it's been dealt with through the court. An initial hearing has been scheduled for May 20th. Councillor Ian Ward, who's been pushing council officers to get the work carried out, expressed anger at the situation. He said, "This site is vitally important to the future generation of Sandown. We simply cannot afford to let this slip. I strongly suspect that these investment companies are linked and that changes in ownership are simply a cynical ploy to delay enforcement action, which I hope the court will see through." On Sunday, it will be the first anniversary of the devastating fire that could have destroyed this building. No criminal damages were ever brought, and Many people believe the circumstances surrounding the fire were highly suspicious. This site deteriorates daily before our eyes. The suggestion that it doesn't have an adverse effect on surrounding properties is ridiculous, and recent owners have put absolutely no plans forward for redevelopment. I hear constant reports of youngsters inside the hotel. Who knows what harm they might come to? We know this is happening and we can't ignore it. I'll be attending the court case to hear for myself what is said and will continue to pursue this issue with officers. I very much hope that this appeal is dealt with quickly and effectively and doesn't hold up enforcement action by too long.
RNIB receives funding boost. A Royal National Institute of Blind People service has received a funding boost from Simply Health, a provider of health financing solutions, meaning that the Isle of Wight Eye Care Liaison Officer service, based in St Mary's Hospital, has been extended from part-time to full-time. RNIB Head of Eye Care and Confident Living, Caroline Chamberlain, said, "Receiving a sight loss diagnosis can be an overwhelming experience. ECLOs provide a vital service and ensure those patients who need help get tailored advice and support at a time when they need it the most." Laura Cooljar, RNIB ECLO at St Mary's Hospital, said, "My role is about reassuring the patient that they're not alone and helping them get the right support and information in a timely manner to enable them to remain independent. ECLOs form part of RNIB's Sight Loss Advice Service, which provides practical and emotional support over the phone, face-to-face at many hospital eye clinics or through online information."
In February 2020, Matthew Littlechild from Ryde hit a pedestrian on Union Street with his car, causing a fractured skull injury. He failed to turn up to his sentencing at Isle of Wight Magistrates Court on Tuesday, that's May the 3rd, but the matter was still settled. He now has 8 points on his licence, which is a total of 11 altogether, a £120 fine, £85 in costs, and a £34 surcharge.
New high harm team to reduce violent crime. Isle of Wight Police has set up a newly established high harm team, which will be headed by Inspector Alison Atwood, who has recently started a new role on the island. Inspector Atwood said, "The team will be made up of myself, a sergeant, a handful of PCs and a PCSO, and our focus will be targeting perpetrators who cause the most harm to our communities. My priorities are around tackling serious sexual offences and violent crime in particular. This will involve working with repeat domestic abuse perpetrators to reduce their offending, identifying and disrupting. Class A drugs networks and dealers involved in serious violence, as well as working hard to reduce knife crime and target habitual knife carriers on the island. This type of offending has always been a policing priority, of course, but our team will be focused on really driving this work forward. In addition to the above, we will also be supporting children who are at risk of criminal and sexual exploitation. Much of what we do will be intelligence-led, so a real plea from me is to keep reporting incidents into us. Depending on what is reported, you may not see an immediate police response, but we will be working behind the scenes to put the bigger picture together before taking action."
Curtin Up Amateur Dramatic Society is to put on its 100th production to celebrate the past 70 years of the Queen's reign. The freshwater-based society was formed in 1977, rising from the ashes of the West Wight Little Theatre and the Thespians, both formed in the 1940s and who were struggling to find new members. In its heyday, Curtin Up staged large-scale musicals and plays. However, in recent years the shows have been scaled down with one-act plays and murder mystery evenings. The 99th production, Blue Murder at the Blue Parrot, a comedy murder mystery, proved so popular it sold out as soon as tickets went on sale. A Jubilee extravaganza has been written and produced by member Cheryl May, who said, "A few years ago we were close to disbanding, but thanks to a couple of new members and past members rejoining the society, we were able to produce this, our 100th show." There's a wealth of experience at Curtain Up. For most of us, Amdram is more than just a hobby. It's been a way of life for many, many years, and one that we'd hate to lose. Cheryl has more than 100 published play and pantomime scripts under her pen name, Cheryl Barrett, and facilitates a fortnightly writing group, Write Place, at Freshwater Library. She added, "I'm fortunate I was able to devise and write comedy sketches for the review, with some of them accepted for publication by Lazy Bee Scripts." Cheryl is currently working on Curtain Up's autumn production, another comedy murder mystery. A Jubilee extravaganza is on Friday and Saturday, May 20th, 21st, 7:30 p.m. at Freshwater Memorial Hall. Tickets at £9 can be purchased from the Cabin, Freshwater and the FYT shop, Totland. Money raised will be donated to local charities. Anyone interested in joining Curtain Up should contact Membership Secretary Ruth Thomas, 752-666, for further details, or attend the production and speak to members.
Richard Priest reports on the Randonnée returning. After a 3-year break, the Isle of Wight Randonnée returned on Sunday with more than 2,500 cyclists from across the country enjoying either the 100k, a 62 miles all-island route, or the 55k distance. Hardened participants, as well as the occasional rider, started their treks from checkpoints around the island, including Yarmouth, Ventnor, Bembridge, Wootton and East Cowes, and enjoyed a day which started at around 9 a.m. in good conditions and ended in drizzle. Both routes were supported by refreshments provided by parent-teacher associations from St Mary's, Bembridge and Yarmouth primary schools, with volunteers from Isle of Wight wayfarers directing traffic, helping with QR code registrations and aiding those new to the island to get their bearings. The floating bridge carried countless cyclists across the Medina, with the checkpoint at Waitrose in East Cowes being busy all day. Caroline, a cyclist from London-based club, said, "I've been over for the weekend and the island is a tremendous place for cyclists to visit, and catching the floating bridge adds to the event." The Isle of Wight Randonnée was started in 1985, 2 years after the formation of the Wayfare Cycle Touring Club, for like-minded individuals who enjoyed the gentle pursuit of cycling. Due to the nature of the event, the Randonnée is now administered by Cycle Island, a not-for-profit organisation which donates any surpluses to local charities and has introduced COVID-safe measures such as online registration to reduce infection risks. At Elverstone, a crossover point for both the 100k and 55k routes, a group of cyclists from Manchester, Birmingham and Liverpool discussed the challenging parts of the route, as well as the off-road former railway routes, including the shaded track from Sandown through Newchurch, Horringford, Shide and Newport, finishing at Cowes and following the Medina for much of the journey. Doubtless there will be quite a few saddle-sore cyclists sharing memories of the 2022 Isle of Wight Randonnée, and exclusive medals for participants and plans in hand for the 2023 event, with many volunteers likely to be involved in the running of the Tour of Britain cycle race finale on September the 11th, 2022.
2 accident reports now. On Saturday, April 30th, Her Majesty's Coast Guard, the Isle of Wight Ambulance Service and Hampshire and Isle of Wight Fire and Rescue Service worked together to free a man who was stuck in the mud on the banks of Wootton Creek. The man was successfully removed and taken to St Mary's Hospital to be checked over. And then Solent Coast Guard requested Bembridge RNLI launch their lifeboat Tuesday morning, that's May the 3rd, to help an unwell member of the Norwegian-flagged Bow Summer ship. They were suffering with shoulder and back pains and were taken to Portsmouth on the Alfred Albert Williams Tamar class lifeboat, and from there to Queen Alexandra Hospital.
Isle of Wight fuel poverty soon to double. Local emergent energy-saving charity, the Footprint Trust, has warned that the percentage of island households suffering from fuel poverty will double. The figures are set to jump from the pre-COVID figure of around 9% of households to 17.6%. The information was recently released by the End Fuel Poverty Coalition in April, revealing that the Isle of Wight will continue to have some of the highest levels of fuel poverty in the southeast, with an average of around 8.6%. The Footprint Trust estimates that the current number of fuel-poor homes is around 8,000, whilst official figures say the number is some 6,000. Looking forward, it is clear that at least 11,000 households will be in economic hardship. This is due to a combination of various factors, including rising inflation, massive increases in the cost of domestic fuel, loss of jobs and benefit cuts.
Photographer and writer Corinthia West will be showcasing her photography exhibition Hanging Out at the Key Arts in Newport. The exhibition will show rare and unpublished images of icons of 70s music, film and society, including Mick Jagger, Ronnie Wood, George Harrison, Neil Young, Angelica Houston, Helen Mirren and Carly Simon. Through her early career as an actress and model, Corinthia West became a part of the 70s celebrity scene. During this time, she captured intimate moments with her friends, resulting in a personal archive of natural, unposed images of the stars. Specially curated by Corinthia for Key Arts, the exhibition will feature more than 40 large-format photographs. Corinthia has a strong connection to the Isle of Wight, spending much of her childhood growing up here, and she also attended the 3 original Isle of Wight festivals. Her parents, Mike and Christine West, were instrumental in the founding of Key Arts Centre, making this exhibition a special kind of homecoming. Corinthia's work has been exhibited in the past at the San Francisco Art Exchange, LA's KM Fine Arts, Soho Contemporary Gallery, New York City, London's Library Space, the American Museum and Gardens in Bath, and Dimbola Lodge, Isle of Wight. The Hanging Out exhibition will be at Key Arts from Saturday, May 14th to Friday, July the 8th, open from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. with free entry. The preview will be held on Friday, May 13th at the Key Arts from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m, also free entry.
Group escorted off island. On Monday, May the 2nd, a large group of men in cows were escorted off the island when their antisocial behaviour turned into a public order incident. Police escorted the men to the Red Jet to ensure they left the island. It's thought they were also disruptive on the boat by interfering with the life jackets and shouting.
A woman in her 40s was pulled from the sea following a large-scale search for a missing person in East Cowes on Sunday and in the early hours of Monday morning. A Hampshire and Isle of Wight police spokesman confirmed a woman was pulled from the sea last night at around 12:20 a.m. on Monday morning by Castle Point. She was taken to hospital, but staff were unable to save her. It's since been confirmed that the woman in the sea was unfortunately the missing person. Her family have been made aware. Earlier, the emergency services, including police, fire, Cowes RNLI, Ventnor and Bembridge Coast Guard Rescue, and the Isle of Wight search and rescue teams all assisted in searching the area at various times throughout the afternoon and evening after the woman had last been seen around 4 p.m. Police have confirmed the death is not being treated as suspicious.
And finally, 3-car collision in Ashy. On Wednesday, May the 4th, 3 cars were involved in a crash in Ashy at the junction with Green Lane. A 19-year-old man from Newchurch was arrested at the scene on suspicion of drug driving and was taken into custody at Newport police station. And now we move on to some Wight memories and nostalgia. First of all, the night the bombs fell on East Cowes, remembered by a survivor. He may be nearly 90 and now living in Southsea, but Canon Bruce Carpenter remembers the night the bombs fell on East Cowes very well. At the time, he was a 9-year-old boy and was living in Yarborough Road, which was one of the most heavily hit areas in East Cowes. On the night of May the 4th, 5th, 1942, Bruce was in the public air raid shelter, which suffered a direct hit that resulted in 20 people being killed. He said, "It was towards the end of my first year at Whippingham School that the German planes started bombing Portsmouth and Southampton, and, along with it, East Cowes, which was targeted partly because of the shipyard and the aircraft factory, but also because there was a Polish warship moored at the mouth of the River Medina. For a young boy it was even quite exciting, because the exploding bombs and anti-aircraft shells left bits of twisted metal around the streets, which Dad told us was known as shrapnel. So now, as well as stopping soldiers in the street to ask for spare army badges or buttons, we boys started collecting shrapnel too." He remembered having great times plane spotting, but as the war went on, the seriousness of what was happening became more obvious. On May the 4th, Bruce and his siblings went to a 50th anniversary party at the Methodist Church Hall at the top of the road. Bruce recalled, "The party started at 5 p.m. with a special tea, and we had a good time with plenty to eat, and the conjurer had us fascinated. We had just started on the first of the party games when the air raid siren sounded. A few minutes later there was a sound of massive explosions very close. The church hall windows were blown in and the blackout panels came crashing down." As Bruce said, his siblings only lived a few doors down the road. They were told they could run home, but Bruce got left behind when he stopped to pick up his dog Paddy. An air raid warden stopped him and said, "Here, lad, get in here quickly or you'll get yourself killed." Bruce continued, "Before I could protest, he grabbed me by the shoulder and pushed me into one of the shelters. I tried to explain that I lived just down the road, but he took no notice, said that I shouldn't be out in the street on my own anyway." More people piled into the shelter. There was no room for sitting down. It was pitch black and hot and stuffy. Suddenly there was an ear-splitting bang. The entire shelter, with all of us in it, flew up into the air and landed down with an immense thump, followed by the sound of bricks and mud raining down on the roof. People were shouting, women were screaming. Those injured were groaning and crying. It was all truly terrifying. I tried to cling on to Paddy, but he slipped from my arms and ran off between people's legs. I hated the screaming so much that I shouted, "Please stop screaming," but it still went on. "It's all right, son," said a man right next to me. "They can't help it. Don't you worry, we'll be rescued soon." Moments later, the Home Guard started digging them out, but Paddy was gone. The shelter had been flung right across the road, with all of us in it. It was now a heap of bricks, mud and dust. I found out later that a huge bomb had dropped within a few feet of that shelter, so we were thrown into the air by the blast and landed 30 feet away. No sooner had he got out of one shelter than an air raid warden grabbed hold of him and pushed him across the road into a different shelter. I still felt like crying, but I thought I must try to be brave. I was desperate to know if Mum and Dad and the rest of the family were all right. I was worried too about Paddy. His family was okay, but they weren't allowed back into their house because it was badly damaged, so they were taken to Ryde to an emergency refuge centre. And Bruce's story is among those included in the exhibition on the Blitz, organised by East Cowes Heritage Centre at East Cowes Town Hall tomorrow, Saturday, from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m.
This article is about the life and times of Newport Quay and the island capital's harbour. In the late 16th century, where Quay Arts and the Riverside Centre stand today, there was once a marshy wetland known as the Ouse or Ooze, where the town's inhabitants moored and mended their boats. By the early 1800s, the marsh had been reclaimed and converted to pasture, and in 1851, Newport Corporation dredged the area to create a town harbour. It was a success from the start and became the island's main port of entry and exit for goods for nearly 100 years. An 1872 list of carriage rates from Newport to Southampton includes clover seed at 9p a sack, anchovies a shilling per barrel, molasses at 4 shillings per puncheon, and soap at 6p per firkin. Building materials and timber gave the harbour a good living for the first half of the last century, until by the early 1960s it was dealing with more than 2,000 vessels a year. The future looked bright, but bad times were just around the corner. With the arrival of container lorries in the 1960s, Newport Harbour lost its trade almost overnight, and the quayside became neglected and run down, the council adding insult to injury by demolishing many fine old warehouses in C Street. Luckily, the building once known as the Porter's Store was spared, and in the late 1970s, after a long struggle by campaigners, it became the Quay Arts Centre. It was a bold move that almost certainly saved the remaining buildings from demolition and marked a turning point in the quay's fortunes. Slowly the harbour began to dust itself off and began a new life based on leisure instead of commerce. The Riverside Centre and the Bargemen sprang up, and the Jubilee Stores building, formerly home to BRS hauliers, gained a new life as an art studio. The harbour, now complete with hotel, was transformed into a popular haven with well-equipped berths for visiting yachts. Once again, Newport Quay was open for business.
And now for my view from Malcolm Mime, who says, "Don't get sucked in by the hype." Last week, our editor-in-chief, Alan Marriott, used this column to mention how there weren't enough charging points on the Isle of Wight for the growing number of electric cars. I don't know that he'd bought a new car, but it certainly didn't surprise me to read that he'd gone electric, as he has always been a supporter of green issues. I, on the other hand, am the Antichrist when it comes to going green, but not without reason, which I'll come on to soon. This past winter I have enjoyed many a coal fire, and only recently I treated myself to a new gas-guzzling Chelsea tractor. As I write this article, I am currently on board a Boeing 747 heading for a holiday in the sun, and the flight will emit the equivalent of a quarter of the annual CO2 emissions of my car. So really my car pales into insignificance when we compare it to flying, and unless those with electric cars have vowed never to fly again, then their green driving habits really don't impress me. Not that they impress me anyway. Let me explain why not. It's not that I don't care about the planet, it's just that I refuse to get sucked in by all the hype. Climate change has become very much the hot topic, if you'll excuse the pun, of both the media and politicians. If we didn't have the BBC and the such like producing television programmes about climate change, we would be blissfully none the wiser. The weather on the Isle of Wight is no different now than it was when we were all children, and it would be no different in another 50 years' time. That's not to say that the climate isn't changing. It's been changing constantly for billions of years, with periods when the Earth gets very hot and periods when it gets very cold. But such changes take millions of years to reach danger levels. And even if we were imminently reaching a point of the Earth either burning up or freezing over, which we're not, then however much we humans changed our living habits, we couldn't defy Mother Nature. Climate change is inevitable. My advice is not to get sucked in by the hype. There are far more important things to worry about than climate change. But if you do live in an area that has become more prone to flooding, or live near the edge of a cliff that is eroding, there is a very simple solution: move. The pilot has just announced that we are coming into land, so I'd better wind up. But before I sign off, I must give a quick update on the ongoing floating bridge saga. The council are still haggling to try and get back some of the 3.2 million wasted on the not fit for purpose FB6. This mediation should come to a conclusion very soon. But seeing that the FB6 has been out of action for so long in recent months, it has shown us all that we really don't need a vehicle crossing the Medina. So once the haggling is over and a settlement is agreed, can the council please see sense and scrap the bridge once and for all? We've moved on, literally.
This is a public information article by Bob Seeley, the MP for the Isle of Wight. Being above all a constituency MP means primarily focusing my energies on delivering for the island. For me, representing the island in Parliament is a labour of love. However, as well as fighting for the island, MPs also play a role in the national debate, questioning ministers, speaking on issues they know something about or have taken an interest in. That's why I sometimes talk about Russia and Ukraine. Before I became the island's MP, I lived in the USSR many years ago, and specifically in Kyiv, the Ukrainian capital. I've also studied and lectured in Russian warfare. As a UK soldier, I served in the British Armed Forces on Iraq, Afghan, Libyan and ISIS campaigns. Last month I travelled to Ukraine, staying in Kyiv and visiting Odessa and Mykolaiv in the south of the country to listen to soldiers and civilians. I did so because I believe it's important, wherever possible in life, to speak from experience. What I found confirmed my belief that the Ukrainians will fight and fight to the end. They told me, "This is our country. Where does Putin want us to go? We have nowhere else." Boris Johnson has done well leading the Western response. There are significant dangers we need to be aware of, but Ukraine has the right to self-defense and we have the right to support it. One of the other reasons I talk about the issue is that I believe that our political leaders from 2007 were not clear in explaining to the British people that the world was changing. Sadly, leaders from all political parties looked the other way as Russia and China became more belligerent. I don't know if we could have deterred Russian leader Vladimir Putin, but clearly what deterrence there was failed. We may be paying the price of that failure for years to come. That's why I try to explain what is happening in Ukraine and what may happen. In the coming weeks, we'll have a chance to hear from Ukrainians joining us on the island. I thank all those islanders who are welcoming them, and I'm looking forward to meeting these arrivals in the coming days and weeks. To those Ukrainians who are here, we're so sorry to see all the dreadful things that are happening in your country. We applaud your fight for your land, and we welcome you to the Isle of Wight.
And now for some items of entertainment that are up and coming. Wolverton Blues and Folk returns. There is now just a week to go until the return of the Wolverton Folk and Blues event. After a 2-year hiatus, the Day of Music, which raises funds for leukemia research and Bryston Primary School, is back on for 2022. The family-friendly festival has a great line of top-class blues and folk artists, including Europe's premier bluesman Dave Kelly and his band, rising folk stars Granny's Attic, and the acclaimed Papa George Band. The event takes place on the stunning grounds of Wolverton Manor, Shorewell, on Saturday, May the 14th, from 11:30am to 8pm. Organiser Tim Hollis said, "From the successful launch in 2011, the family-friendly festival has been gaining momentum with fantastic bands and artists each year, along with locally produced food, children's activities, tea tent, and not forgetting the real ale tent. As well as the main stage, the popular beer tent acoustic stage will make a welcome return, providing a full and varied programme featuring some of the best folk and blues musicians the Isle of Wight has to offer. Other artists confirmed include the Devil's Damned String Band, the Bohemians, Laurie McVeigh and the High Rollers, the Clacks Band, Steve Love, the Bryston Barnacles, Doug Aldred and Silver Lining, She Shells, Knucklehead, Moonshine Border, Morris, plus more to be announced. Tickets are £10 or 12 on the day. Children 12 and under go free and are available from Waterstones Bookshop Newport, the Village Shop Brystone, Bridlesford Lodge Farm Shop, Bryston School and Orchard Brothers in Freshwater Bay.
Virtuoso Dutch violinist Tim Kufius will bring his unique talent to Medina Theatre to perform with the Isle of Wight Symphony Orchestra. A recipient of a Scottish Jazz Award, he's embraced the diverse genres of classical, gypsy jazz and folk music in a fascinating career. As a Sony classical artist, he recorded the Vivaldi-based Reflecting the Seasons in 2016 and his own Ulysses violin concerto in 2018. It's this work that he'll perform at Medina. The violin concerto in D minor, Ulysses, is a fusion of classical and jazz with swinging rhythms, riff-based melodies and opportunities for virtuoso improvisation too. The composition reveals a love of Stefan Grappelli-era jazz, offering the audience something of a new departure. Brahms' Symphony No. 1 in C minor, regarded as one of the greatest symphonies of the Austro-German tradition, will dominate the second half. The concert on Sunday, May the 15th, starts at 7:15pm.
And Nina to perform Cow's Show. Multi-talented Cowes-based jazz singer Nina Ross will be the star of island promoter Vaguely Sunny's latest concert. The concert at Northwood House Cowes on Friday, May the 13th will start at 7:30pm. Nina will be accompanied by George Bone on piano, John Thorne from Yorkston, Thorne and Carn on double bass, and Chris Jones from the Plastic Mermaids on drums. Guests can enjoy a pared-down, relaxed approach as Nina delivers a set of known and less well-known songs from the American Songbook, such as Round Midnight, Nature Boy, and I'm a Fool to Want You. As well as being a talented singer, Nina is also a photographer and has an artistic background in film and theatre design. Tickets are £10 each and can be booked in advance by calling 730-930.
And now we move on to letters to the editor. This is from P. Griffiths in Ryde. Dear editor, are we suffering from collective amnesia, or have we just swallowed the big lie disseminated by the likes of Edwina Currie, who recently pronounced that Johnson's government had performed absolutely brilliantly during the pandemic? Aside from furlough, which ought to have been better targeted, and the vaccine rollout, all credit to the NHS, Patrick Valence, and the vaccine task force, the rest was mostly dire and at worst deadly. It may be 2 years before the public inquiry reports back, which makes the High Court's judgment that the government acted unlawfully in discharging untested hospital patients back into care homes a significant one. In spite of 20 warnings, the Prime Minister claims they knew little about asymptomatic transmission at that time. Rewriting the past is one of many ways in which Johnson's administration increasingly adopts the tactics deployed in the allegorical novel Animal Farm by George Orwell. One law for them and another for us perfectly captures the pig's corruption of the animal's central commandment. All animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. Meanwhile, another literary giant, Matt Hancock, will soon publish his memoir of the COVID years, as yet untitled. May I suggest Sex, Lies and CCTV?
This is a letter from Chris Perry in Ryde and is a copy of a letter which he has also sent to Bob Seeley. And it's need to tackle MP's drinks perk. I agree that bars should be closed in Parliament. Can you tell me in what other places of work bars exist? As a former Home Office civil servant, our bar was closed years ago, and rightly so. They too were subsidised, so it was not right to use public money for such a purpose then or now. The same is true of Parliament. If you need a drink, there are plenty of bars in Westminster where you can pay proper prices. Yes, if you have guests, you can take them to restaurants in Parliament and have a drink with a meal, but that should be it. I'd welcome your views, and I would urge you to pass on my views, which I imagine would be shared by many of your constituents.
This is from Steve Longford in Northwood. Dear editor, it's interesting how MPs approved an investigation into whether Boris Johnson misled Parliament over lockdown parties that breached COVID regulations. Many backbench Conservative MPs are rightly worried about becoming irreparably damaged by being seen as defending the indefensible. After initial panic, with the government intending to whip its MPs into voting down any investigation, came a U-turn, and it was decided to nod through an investigation without the need for a vote, conveniently denying constituents the opportunity to see whether MP genuinely stands on the issue. But the investigation will not begin until after the Metropolitan Police have finished issuing fixed penalty fines. The Met has said they'll not be serving any more this side of the local elections in May. Clearly, the government doesn't want to see more fines for law breaking issued against senior members of the Conservative Party ahead of these elections. Slippery tactics are what we've come to expect. Here on the Isle of Wight, beyond the spin, it would have been good to see our own COVID law-breaking Member of Parliament, Bob Seeley, actually nail his colours firmly to the mast. I mean, does he support our COVID law-breaking Prime Minister? Does he support law-breaking in general? Or is law-breaking only permissible when it relates to him and the PM? Many believe Boris Johnson broke the law on numerous occasions, misled Parliament, and in effect has shredded the ministerial code. For now, it will be Conservative MPs who will decide Boris Johnson's fate. The electorate will have their say at the next general election. When it comes to getting rid of lying prime ministers, we may not be able to rely on our politicians, but fortunately we can rely on the electorate.
And from a Totland resident who says, I might do the same. Dear editor, I really do not see why Conservative MP Neil Parish should be pilloried for watching a bit of harmless, presumably perfectly legal porn on his mobile phone in the House of Commons chambers. If I had to listen to the opposition bench's continuous wittering wokery, it would probably drive me to do the same. I would be grateful if you do not print my name. My wife reads your newspaper every week. Thank you.
This is from Margaret Nelms from Ventnor. Dear editor, I'm concerned about changes to our National Health Service contained in the Health and Care Bill, soon to become law. I'm concerned that they will open the door to private healthcare companies to interfere in the running of the NHS and make huge profits from taxpayers' money, which should be used as efficiently as possible to help patients. The chairman of each new regional board of directors overseeing health and care has the power to stop this happening. But when I emailed her, Lena Samuels, chairwoman of the Hampshire and Isle of Wight board, would not commit to doing so. The coronavirus pandemic has brought home to us how dedicated our hospital staff are to saving lives and how precious our NHS is. Yet, over the decades, more and more NHS services have been outsourced to private companies, and the American model that our governments have been following is one of the worst value healthcare services in the world and one of the most expensive. Those who cannot afford health insurance are left to suffer, and insurance companies won't pay out for expensive long-term treatments.
And last of all, from MJ Trow in Haven Street. Long list of PMs, worse than our darling Boris. In response to the letter from Jeff Manners in the county press on the 29th of April regarding Boris Johnson being our worst PM ever, may I interject a little balance? I'm sure that Boris can defend himself, but then I don't suppose he often has the chance to read the county press. I do not have space in this letter to make a detailed comparison with other Prime Ministers. I will do that in my forthcoming book on the subject. So here is the shorthand version. Robert Walpole held office for 21 years through systematic bribery. Every man has his price. Duke of Grafton, the laziest Prime Minister in history, achieved nothing. Lord North lost the American colonies through arrogance and complacency. The Duke of Wellington believed that protesters over the Reform Bill of 1832 should be attacked by the army, ridden down at the chest of a horse. Lord Palmerston, Lord Cupid, made sexual advances to virtually anyone in a skirt. Benjamin Disraeli permitted an illegal war against the Zulus, was a hopelessly inept Chancellor of the Exchequer, and never repaid a debt over his country estate. William Gladstone nipped out from number 10 to save fallen women, then whipped himself to atone for the fact. Herbert Asquith presided over a cabinet riddled with corruption over shares in the Marconi Company. David Lloyd George, no secretary was safe in his company. Ramsay MacDonald accepted a Daimler car and £30,000 in shares in the McVitie Company in exchange for honours. Neville Chamberlain kowtowed to Hitler in shocking appeasement. Winston Churchill, admittedly before his time as PM, presided over the useless and bloody Gallipoli campaign of the First World War and sent troops against the unarmed miners in South Wales. Maggie Thatcher reintroduced the hated poll tax of 1381 and put monetarism before people. John Major, a non-event and, as we discovered, adulterer. Tony Blair sponsored an illegal war with Iraq based on false information. So, in answer to Mr. Manners' question, is Boris Johnson our worst ever PM? The answer is an emphatic no. P.S. By the way, nothing from Mr. Manners on smarmy, starmy Angela Rayner and their friends in the Durham Constabulary.
So that's the end of today's county press readings, and it's best wishes, thank you, and goodbye from Howard.
And from Madeline, goodbye.
The In Touch programme follows, and this In Touch is about guide dog refusals at indoor establishments and Navi Lens. In recent years, charity guide dogs have published research that found 75% of guide dog owners had experienced some form of refusal of entry. Unfortunately, guide dog refusals are still very common, and so we look into what steps you can take if it happens at an indoor establishment, for example, restaurants, shops, garden centres, etc. We speak to a guide dog owner about his recent experience when being refused entry into a restaurant, and to Clive Wood, the lead regional policy and campaigns manager at Guide Dogs. If you're a savvy smartphone user, you may have heard of Navi Lens. It's an app that enables visually impaired people to detect and scan special QR codes from a distance. On detecting the code, the app then makes the information contained within it accessible. It can dictate what you're facing toward, read signage at busy train stations and is also attached to many beauty and food products, enabling you to hear the ingredients. The RNIB's Mark Powell explains how it could be potentially useful tool for blind or low vision smartphone users. The presenter of the programme is Peter Wight. The producer is Fern Ludlam.
BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Good evening. Tonight, some problems just don't go away, do they? We look tonight at the latest attempts to stop guide dogs being refused entry to places to which they have a perfect legal right to go. And the app that can do something even the brightest guide dog can't, read a railway indicator board.
Welcome to Euston Station entrance. Straight for Euston Station, left for London Underground, taxis at Euston Square, right for bus terminal. Next departures, 6 minutes.
Clever, eh? But first, one of the commonest complaints which come into our inbox are about the illegal exclusion of guide dogs from taxis, pubs, restaurants, shops. But having the law on your side is one thing, making it stick quite another. Well, we don't all have the chutzpah of student Charles Block when a taxi driver refused to take him with his dog.
Yeah, you don't take the dog. By law, you can't deny us. Are you going to send another car? No, I don't want another car. I want this car. You are cancelling? No. Yeah, okay. If you drive away, I'll sue you. Yeah, I'm ready to go to them. Oh, go on then. Good luck.
Well, Charles carried out his threat to sue and he won. And in the case of taxis, you should get the backing of the local authority which licenses taxis. But as MP Alex Chalk discovered when a constituent of his came to him after being excluded from a restaurant, things are far less clear-cut when it comes to exclusion from premises.
Under Section 168 of the Equality Act, if you are unlawfully refused access to a taxi, well, that's a matter that is punishable by a fine of up to £1,000 and the police can get involved. But if you're refused access to a bricks and mortar premises, a cafe or a restaurant, your options are really this. 1, do nothing. 2, you could go and unleash the gates of hell, as it were, on social media and see what happens and lose all control of the situation. But your other only option is to go and seek a civil remedy, which in plain English means going through the whole hassle and inconvenience and strain of launching your own civil proceedings down at Gloucester County Court or whatever, at cost to you personally, and potentially to get a civil remedy of a fine. Now, that's not a very appealing option for individuals, and I don't think they should have to bear that entire burden, and it seemed inconsistent and wrong to me.
Well, back then in 2018, Alex Chalk seemed hopeful that we would get a change to the Equality Act to at least bring the legal process for challenging access refusals in line with that of taxis. That hasn't happened. So guide dog owners like Barry Ginley, who choose to take their cases to court, have to do so using their own time and their own money. Well, today's producer, Fern Ludlam, arranged to go for a stroll with Barry, courtesy of both of their guide dogs. Here's what he told her.
August of 2021, a friend and I decided to go into a pub for lunch in Victoria in London. On entry, the bar supervisor said we couldn't come in to the bar because we didn't allow dogs. I explained that she was a guide dog and she's covered by the Equality Act 2010, but they still refused and said there's no such law, it's their company policy not to allow any animals in. And then eventually one of their staff got quite aggressive with my friend for filming, tried to sort of take the phone off of him, and at that point I decided that I needed to call the police because of the assault and also the refusal.
How does it make you feel when you get refused, when things like this happen to you, Barry?
It's frustrating because I just want to live my life just like anybody else would, and I hate being treated like a second-class citizen or that I'm not worthy of going into any environments.
Do you see any signs of improvement when it comes to this issue at all?
Not at the moment, because I see more and more on social media of people being refused into pubs or shops.
So you're taking your case to court now. You know, for most people, I would say that's probably a last resort. Did you try other methods of approaching the pub?
We wrote to them, they came back, didn't answer any of the questions, then offered us 2 free dinners. I don't intend to step foot back in that place again. And my solicitors have written to them on several occasions to try and resolve this issue without it going to court, and the business has refused to correspond. And to date, they've still not responded to the courts.
Are you surprised that more people don't take these kind of cases to court?
Unfortunately, I'm not surprised. It's known where to go to get that advice. So my first port of call was to guide dogs, and all they could do for me was give me a number to phone the RNIB. Often people don't want and have the time to pursue such claims. You know, I'd rather not have to do it, but you know, how many times as a guide dog owner or assistance dog owner do we have to go to venues to be told, sorry, you can't come in here? I thought my first case back in 1998 would have changed attitudes, but unfortunately 24 years later it doesn't seem to have made any lasting improvements.
What changes would you like to see made in order to start tackling this problem?
I'd actually like to see the Equalities Act strengthened. So therefore, it's not just a reasonable adjustment. You know, it's a firm civil right to take the assistance dog in. So it's very clear that the dogs can't be refused. Often businesses don't know how to assist disabled people, what adjustments they need to put in place. So having that quality awareness training is important. I often think, you know, when is this going to improve?
Barry Ginley. So, what is the way forward? Well, joining me and listening to that is Clive Wood, who's the lead regional policy and campaigns manager for the charity Guide Dogs. Clive, Barry is very clear that things aren't improving on refusals, and indeed your own website tells us that 75% of service dog owners have experienced at least one refusal. So what do you say needs to change to solve this problem?
Yeah, thank you. No, it is an issue, and I think it's quite clear from what you've heard today that there's still a problem, and it's been there for a long time. And we do need to see change from different aspects, really. First of all, government needs to take a more robust approach, looking at the Equality Act to make it a more straightforward process. But also, there needs to be more action taken by businesses. And we're hearing from a lot of guide dog owners around, we're not talking about small businesses here, we're talking about big corporate organisations who should be delivering disability equality training, including awareness around the law. This is where we think there is a big issue, where staff just aren't aware, frontline staff aren't aware of what the law says, and that's where things need to change.
Talking about the government themselves, we did approach the government for an interview with the Minister for Disabled People. We were told that she wasn't available. Their statement to us said, under the Equality Act 2010, it's unlawful to refuse access to a disabled person with a guide or assistance dog, other than in very exceptional circumstances. They say we expect organisations to ensure their staff are aware of the law and that disabled people are treated with respect and dignity. No suggestion there about strengthening the law. So, I mean, what can you as an organisation do to move this forward?
Yeah, no, I mean, the latest figures were from 2019, before the pandemic, and we have been lobbying government, MPs, we've had parliamentary events to raise this issue, and the government keeps saying that they're going to be looking at it, but it's not happening, and it does need to happen.
Could you not be doing more? I mean, for instance, we heard there, Barry said when he brought his latest experience of refusals to guide dogs, he was, given the number for the RNIB. Shouldn't you be bringing these cases yourselves? Because that's the way it would get real publicity.
Yes, we're going to put our hands up and say we should be doing more, and we're recognising that, and we're introducing more action this year. For example, we've set up workshops for guide dog owners called Access with Confidence, to make them aware of what the law says and what action they can take when they are refused and after a refusal. But we also need to recognise that we need to be giving more support to guide dog owners in situations like this. And we want to hear from more guide dog owners, because actually we know that the numbers are higher and we want to take more action.
Well, we'd like to hear from them too. Clive Wood, thank you very much indeed. And still on the issue of getting around, it does seem that if you want tangible improvements, you probably have to turn to technology to get them. The best of guide dogs aren't going to be able to read a station arrivals and departures board to you. But here's news of a bit of kit that might be able to do the job. The app provider Navi Lens has conducted a trial of this piece of equipment at Euston Station. Mark Powell from the RNIB took part in the trial. Here he is demonstrating some of its features.
So I've opened Navi Lens, I'm outside the station. Let's go have a look.
6 metres away. Welcome to Euston Station entrance. Straight for Euston Station. Left for London Underground. Taxis at Euston Square. Right for bus terminal. Next departures. 6 minutes. West Midlands trains to train.
So I'm getting all the departures too.
6 minutes.
Right, let's carry on walking.
Seeing 2 tags. 6 metres away. Concourse. Continue for platforms 4 to 7. Right for platforms 3 to 1. Toilets and changing places.
So the really cool thing is I can select where I want to go as well. So I could go...
Food. Drinks and shops. Button. Then it's the upper crust. Button.
Let's go to upper crust.
Monday to Sunday. Go to the upper crust.
Go to upper crust.
Set your journey. Yes.
Yes.
Scanning tags started. Left. Left arrow. Left. Left arrow.
So the app is now telling me in real time using augmented reality.
Left.
So
left arrow.
Let's go find. And here we are. We've arrived. How amazing is that?
Arrived.
Well, I'm not sure which was more important, getting the right train or finding his lunch, but Mark joins me now. That all sounded very impressive. I mean, but how does it actually work, especially in the precision that you need to get the information you're after?
Yeah, it certainly is a pretty cool technology, and I can tell you now, I was definitely looking for my lunch. But yeah, effectively what Navi Lens is essentially the next generation of QR code that can be detected from a distance. So whatever your camera can see, you will get relayed. So depending on which direction you're pointing your phone, you'll get that information. So you get a real understanding of the space without really being bombarded with information, because we don't want to be told everything at once. But if we point in the general direction using the piece of tech in the middle, which in this case is the iPhone, then we will get all the information relayed to us in a format that's necessary for us. So it could be Zoom, it could be VoiceOver, it could be anything.
But I guess I'm still trying to figure out how it can sort out the amount of information there is. I mean, how difficult is it to get your smartphone into the right position to get that information?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, a station in its very nature, there's lots going on. There's the signage, there's the dynamic signage, which is the signage which changes all the time, like the train boards. But there's also different points of interest, like upper crust, like you heard in the video. So the thing is, the way this works is the codes are in the environment, and the codes are certain sizes. The codes can only be read at a certain distance. So when you're in I'd say, 5, 6, 7 meters away from upper crust, that's when you're going to know it's there. But you can control what information you're told, and you've got ways in which you can personalize that information using the app. And that's the beauty. What we all ultimately aim for is a service that's personalized to us, that we can control, not the technology controlling us.
And is that the main difference with this? Because it's not the only navigation app around. There have been apps that read barcodes, for instance, for some time. And of course, people do navigate using their smartphone. So is that the key thing that it does? The information is kind of filtered to you at the right time?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, so you're right. There's lots of different technologies out there. But what these codes are triggers that can be detected from a distance up to... there's codes in that video that I'm detecting from about 30 meters away, which are around an A4 size code. So that's, it's not massive. They can do so much more. They can provide information, even based on which direction you've come from. So some technologies out there, they tend to give you all the information at once, but you've come from a certain direction and you don't know whether left or right is left or right from your perspective or left or right from a few metres ahead. So these codes are really intelligent at the same time.
I'm told that other countries such as Spain and the USA already have Navi Lens codes in some of their major transport hubs. How long before we see a significant presence in the UK rather than just an experimental one?
That's a really good question. And I did have the pleasure of, a couple of years ago now, of getting out to Spain and experiencing this for myself. And the strangest thing is, as somebody who's registered blind themselves, the idea of going to a station in another country with a visual impairment and doing that all by myself, the thought I just couldn't comprehend. It's scary. It would make me feel anxious. But I had this app on my phone. All of the codes in that station were in Spanish. The app translated it all to me in English, and I navigated around the station, and I'd never been there before. And I actually took my sighted colleague who was with me around the station himself, which was, again, a very strange scenario to be in. But you know, this is the first implementation here in the UK within a station. We've actually done this already on food packaging. So we've took food packaging accessibility that's to the next level and be detected from 3 meters away. So this kind of technology, it's agile. It can be put in different environments, in different products, in different scenarios.
But of course, it's not just the equipment, is it? It's the purveyor, you know, so the station's got to agree to it, shops have got to agree to it, all those people have got to have it installed.
Absolutely. Yeah, that is key here. I think what we've done here in the UK at Euston, and certainly what we did on packaging, it's getting a lot of attention. For people like myself, we've never actually experienced this before, so blind people taking part in this is really key. But these solutions, in their very nature, they're better for everyone. You know, you have somebody coming into the UK for the first time, navigating around Euston, you know, these codes are a mainstream solution for everyone that just happen to help us. So including blind and partially sighted people and the general public in these trials, again, is key. So we're taking it slow, but there's been a lot of interest in what we've been doing.
And crucially, Mark, how much is it going to cost the individual? I mean, I'm not just talking about the equipment they use to get it on, but the app itself. Is there going to be a cost to this?
No, I mean, so Navi Lens, we've worked with for a number of years now, and their ethos is that to the end user, the technology is free. So it's an app that you can download for free. The cost falls on the stakeholder. So there's no cost to the individual. Like you say, you have to have a smart device to access these things, but technology is obviously providing that bridge for accessibility now in ways in which we could never imagine. So the benefit of investing in a smart device in order to experience this, and touch wood, if it goes right across the country nationally, you know, the benefit is huge. The end user does not pay for the technology.
Mark Powell, thank you very much indeed. And just before we go today, 2 things we'd like your help with for future items. It's local election day on Thursday throughout much of the UK, with a new elections bill just passed, as we reported on last week's programme. We'd like to get your experiences of being able to vote independently and secretly this time. How well did your polling station know the rules? And also, we're planning a programme about accessible tourism now that we can at last move around more freely. I want to know what kind of holidays work and don't work for you as a visually impaired person, and also the trick of travelling with sighted friends and relatives so that both you and they get the best out of the holiday. You can email in touch at bbc.co.uk, leave a voice message on 0161 836 1338, and you can go to our website bbc.co.uk/in touch, from where you can download tonight's and previous editions of the programme. From me, Peter Wight, today's producer, Fern Lulham, and studio managers Phil Booth and Jonathan Esp, goodbye.